Okay, so I'm going to talk about which EU tools we have to finance energy innovation. And to start with, maybe we have to do a distinction first between two different investment tools we have at the EU level. We have on the one hand the European Investment Bank, and on the other one the European budget. These are different tools. The European Investment Bank, it's a public bank. It has two entities, it works in two entities, the European Investment Bank, which mainly finances big projects and big firms, and the European Investment Fund that provides support to firms, small firms and mid-caps. It is a public bank and therefore it works like a bank. It basically gives lending, loans, and it only finances projects that have a positive economic return, and most of them have a normal risk profile. As a bank, they don't want to have big losses, so they are not very risky in their investment, in their lending policy. On the other hand, we have the European budget. It is a budget, and most of this budget is used in form of grants. But we also have, and increasingly so in the latest years, we also have what we call financial instruments. That is, part of the European budget is used in form of loans, guarantees, equity investment, covered by the European budget. And therefore, that allows to give these loans, these guarantees, this equity in a bit better terms than in the private market, and also to finance things or entities or projects that are more risky and that a normal bank would not finance. Now, if we look at these two different entities, and we look at the energy innovation or innovation in general, we know that innovation is something that is very risky to finance because it provides returns, but sometimes they are very uncertain and sometimes there are losses. So at the EU level, what is more important to finance innovation is the EU budget in form of grants and in form of financial instruments. Of course, the European Investment Bank also finances some innovative projects and innovative firms, but it's not its main business. If we look at the EU budget, as I said, we have the grants, we have the instruments. In financial instruments, we have different things. We have, for instance, the Juncker Fund, the famous Juncker plan that is called European Fund for Strategic Investments, and it has been recently created. But we have also other financial instruments that are managed, like the Juncker Fund, by the European Investment Bank on behalf of the Commission. And we have also financial instruments set up by national and regional authorities using part of the allocations coming from the cohesion policy. Now, how really the EU budget supports innovation? One thing important to say is that the support of the EU budget to innovation goes much beyond Horizon 2020, which is the main EU program in support of research and innovation. Of course, this is the big source of funding, but there are other EU spending programs that provide also funding to support the generation of innovation, that is the creation of new ideas, the implementation of innovation, particularly the introduction into the market, and the diffusion of innovation. And that's very important also, the large-scale deployment of very innovative solutions and technologies which can be commercialized, but maybe they require a bit of public support to arrive to other sectors and other regions, other countries. The support of the EU budget to innovation comes in different forms. The most typical one or traditional one is direct support in form of grants to big research and innovation projects. That's typically what the Horizon 2020 does. There is also, however, support to what we say the move from ideas to market, that is support to entrepreneurs and firms that try to commercialize new ideas. And sometimes it's in form of grants, but also sometimes it's in form of financial instruments, loans or equity capital into a highly innovative SME to allow this SME to grow and to commercialize the product, this type of things. Other type of support that comes from the budget is support to the change of information and ideas between public and private actors from different milieux, like academia, private firms, people from the public administration. So that comes in form of public and private partnerships, in form of clusters, in form of networks, and particularly the Horizon 2020 program, that is this big research program, sponsors some types of these public and private partnerships. And then, last but not least, as I say, the EU budget also plays an important role in supporting the deployment of tested innovations that have been already introduced into the market, but with the help of the EU budget, you can support that these innovations arrive to other areas and other sectors, and therefore they have bigger impact in the society and in the economy. Now, if we look a bit on energy innovation in particular, what is the impact or the support of the EU budget in energy innovation? That's very difficult to estimate because, of course, there are different spending programs providing support to this energy innovation, but it's difficult to look from outside. But more or less, if we do an estimate, we can arrive to this graphic that shows a bit the different programs providing support. And you can see that the total estimated amount is of 20 billion of euros for the whole programming period. The biggest part comes from Horizon 2020, is around 7 billion, and it's mainly in form of grants to research and innovation projects in the field of secure, clean and sustainable energy. There is an important part that comes from two programs focused on research in nuclear energy, which are ITER and Euratom. Then the third important part comes from structural funds. It is very difficult to know exactly how much of these structural funds support energy innovation because, well, we don't have all the information, but we know that there is an important part of structural funding invest in energy efficiency, and probably part of this is investing in the deployment of innovative technologies and solutions to apply to buildings, to firms, etc. And also a very tiny part of structural funding is specifically invest in projects, energy-related projects with a research and innovation dimension. Then we have different things. We have NERD 300, which is a program that uses the benefits from the allowances of the European trading climate system. And with this program has as objective to finance innovative projects in renewables and carbon capture and storage. It's around 2 billion. It is a bit criticized, but because it has not worked as well as it should have worked, and it seems it has not innovative things, but still it exists. Then we have LIFE. LIFE is a very small program, more than between 1 and 2 billion, that finance various different projects in the area of environment and climate. And of course, part of this also is to finance innovation in energy-related aspects. Then we have the Connecting Europe Facility, which is the EU program to finance transnational infrastructures. This is not a program that is innovative. It doesn't has as objective to finance innovative things, but a teeny part of these amounts of Connecting Europe Facility have been used to support innovative transnational technologies and infrastructures in energy, and particularly smart grids. And then, last but not least, also we have EFSI. EFSI is the Juncker Fund. The Juncker Fund also is not supposed to be used to promote or to finance innovation. It finances all types of strategic investments in Europe. But we know that an important part has been used to finance energy projects, around 13 billion so far. And from this 13 billion, a tiny part also has been used to projects. If we look the list of EFSI financed projects, around 1.5 billion have been used to finance projects that have both an energy dimension and a research and innovation dimension. So to summarize, what we can say is that we don't have an important amount of funding at EU level to finance energy innovation. 20 billion does not seem a lot for the whole Europe and 7 years. And of course, there are some room for improvement. For instance, there is not a lot of synergies between these different programs. And we know that some programs could be better used to support other programs. For instance, the typical example is between Horizon 2020 and Connecting Europe Facility. It would be very useful if Connecting Europe Facility is more and more used to deploy technologies and solutions that have been financed by Horizon 2020, so that once one project is finalized with the help of Horizon 2020, it can be later on deployed with the help of another EU funding program. This kind of synergies could be improved in the next programming period. If you are interested in this topic, just let you know that we have done a report for the European Parliament, the Jacques Delors Institute, on this topic that you can find in our website.